here's a big question. Why does the Mockingbird Media continue to settle suits with President Trump? I mean, they've got lawyers. They've got tons of lawyers. They've got shareholder money they could spend. And we're told that these things stand to destroy journalism as we know it. So why do they continue to punt? I mean, we can reach into example after example of the Mockingbird Media continuing to air insane voices about President Trump that they never came close to airing in regard to figurehead Biden. They never questioned the money the Biden family had. They never really questioned Hunter and why he was continuing to remain free. They never questioned the deals that Biden made, or obviously on behalf of his son. But they'll let people go on their air, like on this, on CNN, and compare President Trump's museum agenda to literal fascism after the style of Benito Mussolini.
Fascists are interested in deploying museums as extensions of propaganda. Remember in Italy under Mussolini, that's how the museum was projected to further the notion of romantica, the Romanness. We have in this country the attempt to extend the tradition of Americana, a narrow version of what it means to be an American. Is it called the Jewish Museum? It's called the Holocaust Museum. Why? Because the Holocaust was central to the 20th century in defining genocide and its ability to eradicate and eviscerate entire populations. This is what happened in America. And what's happening now is that a president extends that fascist impulse to use the museum as a footstool for his personally chosen artifacts of history, as opposed to the independent, rigorous assessment of what we have in this nation.
Okay, here's some rigorous assessments, and it took the rapid response team at the president's team to respond to this. It took them about 5 minutes. This is something from the Smithsonian Institute. It's an infographic produced by the Smithsonian in 2020 to educate people on how the ways of white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized. And what do you have? Rugged individualism, family structure, emphasis on scientific method, history, Protestant work ethic, religion, status, power, time, being on time for meetings. Being on time for meetings is whiteness. Future orientation, aesthetics, holiday, justice, competition, communication. All of this is whiteness. May I just posit a thought? Any society that did not value showing up on time for things lost every war they ever fought. Because if it wasn't your value to show up on time to fight the war, you left your other people wanting. This is what President Trump's talking about here. So why does the Mockingbird Media continue to settle with him? Because of things like that. Because of behind the scenes. It has to do with the behind the scenes decisions that they'd rather pay off, and another media company just did this. Here's another example. This is from CBS. Scotty Mack talking about the DC crime data. Really, really interesting that he hid some information on the arrest of an illegal immigrant.
The number of National Guard troops on the streets and in the neighborhoods of Washington, D.C. is poised to more than double. The Republican governors of at least a half dozen states have deployed hundreds more, with West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey saying he wants to help restore cleanliness and safety in the nation's capital.
This doesn't make sense. You know it doesn't make sense.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says the sight of troops policing U.S. citizens on U.S. soil is un-American and unwarranted, with violent crime down 26% this year.
The numbers on the ground in the district don't support 1,000 people from other states coming to Washington, D.C.
President Trump touted the second week of his takeover of D.C. police and deployment of hundreds of federal agents.
People that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner.
And they're quoting here. They're quoting Muriel Bowser, a woman who herself asked to have the National Guard put under her control so she could do what President Trump is doing. In that same report, they hid information about an illegal immigrant. Christian Enrique Carrillo Torres was detained by officers as the altercation was filmed outside of Bluestone Lane on 14th and R Street. So they can go to this in this other clip. According to Dan Rosenweig, Ziff, a reporter of the Washington Post, who took a video and posted it on the social media platform X. The delivery driver was identified with a different name spelling, Christian Enrique Carrillo Torres, a Venezuelan native who entered the U.S. in 2023. According to Assistant Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, he entered here illegally. McLaughlin said Torres had a final order of removal from immigration judge and multiple warrants in Maryland after failing to appear in court on traffic offenses. See, they are behind the scenes making decisions to run things like this to hide the fact that the D.C. police commander is under investigation for rigging crime statistics, and now the chief of the D.C. Police Union, a union sacrosanct to the media and the left, a union head is saying, yes, they do. They do manipulate crime statistics. They force us to do it. So why does the Mockingbird Media continue to run things like this, knowing that President Trump is a guy who's going to sue them over things like this when they libel him and they end up settling? There's a big reason for this. It has to do with something they can't afford to have you see, so they've got to keep it clean. You want to keep things clean in your body, you absolutely do, and you have some decisions to make on how to do this. You can continue to buy the same soap you always have, because who cares? It's just soap. It just hides in the shower or by the bathroom sink. You can continue to do that, or you can examine your heart. The companies you're buying from soap from now probably don't care about your values. Their soap is probably made with tons of chemicals. If it's in China, it may well be tested on prisoners or even made with slave labor. Allen Soaps is the opposite of all of this. This soap is made in America by a family with 3 generations of soap-making expertise. It is absolutely natural, no chemicals in it, and it supports a mission you probably support, which is providing jobs for people like Alan and Ian, people who the rest of the world would say should have been unalived in the womb because they're so high up on the autism spectrum. So examine your heart and try the soap. If you love it, subscribe. It's allensoaps.com/Todd. allensoaps.com/Todd. You get 10% off all their products there, and you'll be supporting your values. allensoaps.com/Todd. CNN's Brian Stelter, who had to take some time away because his show was failing. Brian Stelter came back not with the show, but as a commentator, and he wrote this on Twitter. Just in, Paramount has reached an agreement in principle to resolve the lawsuit filed by President Trump and Representative Jackson in the Northern District of Texas and a threatened defamation action concerning a separate 60 Minutes report. Paramount says, under the terms of the settlement, which were proposed by the mediator, Paramount will pay $16 million in total, which includes plaintiff's fees, costs, and except for fees and costs will be allocated to the future presidential library, just like the ABC deal. Now, Stelter has warned that this creates a chill in the media environment. It's going to stop people from saying things out loud. Here's a little bit of an inside look at this. The judge set a trial date for September 2026, guaranteeing at least another year of distraction and wide-ranging discovery. Remember that phrase, wide-ranging discovery, allowing Mr. Trump's lawyers to investigate the inner workings of CBS News. The Redstones, the family that owns CBS effectively, the Redstones also worried that Mr. Trump's lawyers could cherry-pick raw footage and internal communication and do more damage to CBS News' reputation than any settlement would. Ms. Redstone said CBS personnel had told her that in October 2023, when Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes interviewed President Joseph R. Biden Jr., the president had seemed drowsy and seemed to be had to be prodded to answer. She and Tyler worried that CBS might be accused of editing the interview to conceal Mr. Biden's failings. They concealed his failings. The figurehead had to be prodded to answer. Can you picture this? Mr. President, did you hear the question? Mr. President, did you hear the question? The reason they are settling these lawsuits is it's not just the raw footage they would get. They would get email correspondence. They would get behind the scenes direct messages on social media. They could track the money. Who is paying them to do this? Or is it simply just their ideological hatred of anything populist or conservative? The media continues to settle because of that phrase, wide-ranging discovery. This is one of the reasons why I hope that people and organizations will sue the media for their role in promoting ineffective and harmful medicines, or let's say, a certain shot. Because in a wide-ranging discovery, I think you'd find out that pharma companies have been saying in the background, we're going to need you to not run reports like this. We're going to need you to bury things like this. Did they put stuff like that in writing? Sure, because no one ever is held to account. They're not afraid of being held to account because no one ever is. So the Mockingbird Media continues to clown itself and continues to destroy any belief in journalism. This is from MSNBC, which is rebranding itself to MS Now. And what that means is MS Now is recognition that the MSNBC brand is so utterly destroyed that it cannot possibly ever come back. Otherwise, they try to at least have it recognizably tied to MSNBC, such as MSNB Now. But they don't. They want it just to be Now. From MSNBC, Joy Reid went on a racist rant talking about white people stealing what, Joy Reid?
Donald Trump, he said himself he could never get a Kennedy Center honor. Unworthy. But he can get one now. He can steal one because he owns a Kennedy Center. They can't fix the history they did. Their ancestors made this country into a slave hell. But they can clean it up now because they got the Smithsonian. They can get rid of all the slavery stuff. They got PragerU. They can lie about the history to the children. They can't originally invent anything more than they ever were able to invent good music. We black folk gave y'all country music, hip hop, R&B, jazz, rock and roll. They couldn't even invent that, but they have to call a white man the king.
Got it. So they invented this. Black people did. How? The African musical scale has either 5 notes, pentatonic, or 7 notes, heptatonic, within an octave. European musical structure has 12. What is the structure of rock and roll music? It's based upon the European chord structure. How do white people steal that? That's the European scale. And it was devilishly difficult for me to go prove this, the chromatic scale of European music. It was devilishly difficult. It took me almost 6 seconds to do both searches on Google. And their AI answered this. So Joy Reid, when she says things like this, maybe she's not counting on people like me knowing this from memory because my dear friend is a great music theorist and taught me these things. But she also avoids something else here. And that is this, the beauty of what happened. The European scale combined with African sensibilities, yes, it helped create things like jazz, which helped create things like country and rock, absolutely, but it couldn't have happened without the chromatic scale. It was a joining together of things of beauty that God planted in all of us. Joy Reid is so bent ideologically, so driven by hatred, that she's willing to pretend that African Americans are the only people who had anything to do with modern music. If you were to go behind the scenes as you would in a lawsuit, which is why these people continue to settle with President Trump, imagine what other hatred you would find and what other intent you'd find. I think you'd find them saying right out loud, we need to twist this story to hurt Trump more.